We're covering Trump's struggle to contain the fallout from the war he started in Iran. And later, Andrew Weissman joins us. And I want to tell you, by the end of this hour, we have something very special with author and New York art legend Fab Five Freddy. You can see him there back in the glory days. That's by the end of the hour. So I invite you to stick with us for all of that. We begin, though, with this investigative reporting which undercuts Trump's war claims. Iran's nuclear timeline is about the same as before the war. I'm going to walk through that reporting, but just think about this context and how it's bad for Trump. He broke his vow to avoid those so-called forever wars, which had saddled other Republican presidents. And Trump launched this war in the same region, the Middle East, picking a fight that immediately proved more complex than the initial hawkish claims. In that sense, history has that echo. It's not exactly the same. This is not a ground war, as of today. And there weren't exactly false claims about WMDs inside the country, but there are still lies. That's the context, as I mentioned, for this reporting tonight, because the lies include lies about an adversary's weapons, what they are, what they have, their ability to do harm. That is as serious as it comes when you're dealing with leadership and statecraft. And, of course, brave men and women in our armed forces, their lives on the line. So Trump does find himself, as we begin tonight, far closer to George W. Bush's Mideast problems than 2 months ago. And whatever the many criticisms that are of Donald Trump, and I'll show you some of the polling later in the hour, this is a new bad problem he created that is worse for him and, of course, the country than 2 months ago. It includes a credibility crisis because Reuters is reporting the time that Iran needs to build a nuclear weapon has not changed since last summer. I'm leaving that up on the screen for a second because you may have heard about this or seen an alert on your phone. Of course, it's been discussed on our air today. This is the core of it. We'd always tell you, go read the whole article. Go read as much as you can if you want to be informed. But I am telling you that if you don't read the whole article, this is the part you need to know. This detonates everything Trump and his team has been saying. Because the time that Iran needs to build a nuclear weapon has not changed since last summer, since this war began. That's the key finding. It shreds Donald Trump's main war defense, even as the gas prices have been surging and the war rationales have shifted. You might recall, if you've been following all this, this is what they keep coming back to. Hey, even if gas is more expensive, which they sometimes kind of admit is a problem, and other times they minimize it, but even if that's the case, they claim this costly war would be worth it because the U.S., quote, obliterated Iran's nuclear program. That's what they were claiming. And we live in a world of information and propaganda and viral memes, and people hear that and they go, well, if that's the case, then I guess that's at least the other side of the ledger. High gas prices, but we achieved something over there. But that's false. After 2 months of fighting, Reuters is drawing on the United States' own intelligence. This is not some outside assessment. They are drawing on that, their sources and methods reporting to find that Iran's nuke capabilities are broadly unchanged, with limited new damage to the nuclear program. And that unchanged nuclear program might require destroying or removing Iran's remaining stockpile of highly enriched uranium. But the regime's critics still say it could be helpful to have some kind of global alliance that stands up to Iran, that some steps earlier in this process could have been useful. Remember, Iran has a lot of opponents in the Muslim Middle East and its neighborhood and neighboring countries. But the fact that Trump is failing to do the thing, his nuclear program, in a substantial way, does not cancel out that plenty of folks are against Iran and want to contain it. The facts are the facts, though. The war has not changed Iran's regime. We knew that because they replaced a hardliner with a younger hardliner. It hasn't changed the country's broad nuclear capacity, what it can do over time. What Trump has changed are the gas prices at home, the oil supply, the uncertainty abroad. U.S. ships have just faced coordinated threats from Iran, small boats, missiles, and drones, and a sustained barrage. The open-ended blockade means those risks continue, even though, thankfully for the U.S., that attack wasn't very successful. Now, Trump officials were grilled on these problems today. The defense secretary says the ceasefire is basically holding. His counterpart at State, Marco Rubio, meanwhile, trying to spin how we count the war. Now, that's usually a bad sign. If a war is over, there's not a big debate about counting it. And if it's going well, achieving clear objectives over time, we've seen the American public in past wars tends to have support, particularly in the initial phase, the first few months. This is different for some of the reasons you know and that I already mentioned. Trump went it alone, had shifting rationales, and the big core rationale that might even be justifiable with the high gas prices, it's not true. So this is now, with the counting, a bid to stem the growing bipartisan opposition to this war. There are more and more congressional Republicans at least eyeing using the 60-day limit in the War Powers Law. Keep that in mind as you listen to both men.
Secretary Hegseth, last 24 hours or so, Iran's fired at us. We fired at Iran. I'm just going to ask you more directly, is the ceasefire over?
No, the ceasefire is not over. Ultimately, this is a separate and distinct project, and we expected there would be some churn at the beginning, which happened. And we said we would defend and defend aggressively, and we absolutely have.
The operation is over. Epic Fury, as the president notified Congress, we're done with that stage of it. Okay, we're now on to this project of freedom.
The United States is not done. At a time like this, it's sometimes our job, those of us who are doing the reporting, trying to look at the facts and the sources, show you what's being claimed, and then try to show you the evidence of what's true, to just say it out loud. No, the U.S. is not done, obviously. The soldiers know that. They're over there facing these continued threats. And from what we can tell, the public knows it. The public knows this is an ongoing war. They know that their president, whatever his big claims and vows, has not effectively managed it. Not for the goals abroad, not for the economy at home. The public knows they are facing rising energy prices that are hammering families and businesses alike, as the Times reports. Gas is about $4.50 per gallon. Americans know why. Trump's broken promise to bring down prices echoes like so many others. Back in the Trump 2024 campaign, they actually sold bumper stickers roasting Biden for gas prices. Joe Biden owes me gas money. That's a real bumper sticker. You can see them on real bumpers of real cars, probably most of them affixed there in 2024. Well, that was back when gas was about $3.50 a gallon, the price everyone would swap compared to a year ago, or obviously to Trump's current war tax price, which is about $4.50. Americans are rejecting all this, which drives Trump to his worst numbers yet. He was already on the way down. He was unpopular before starting this war, but now he's in a tough spot. He's lower than Biden's worst numbers before the then incumbent president dropped out. And the two have something else in common right now. They both face American majorities that have concluded they no longer are mentally fit to be president. This is never a comfortable topic, not one that you leap towards if you care about your country. You would rather have all of these things resolved peacefully and democratically, and not with the talk that Trump faces now about whether he can actually competently finish this term. But according to the public, there's concern that he can't. Trump's number there includes some conservatives and Republicans who've also come to the view that the president is unfit, that he lacks mental sharpness, that he neither mentally nor physically is up to the job. And there are 2+ years left in this job constitutionally, unless you have to resort to the never-used constitutional provision to remove someone who is completely unable to do the job. People have come to that view. Think about this. Even with Donald Trump's sustained PR and government propaganda operations, in other words, partisan and political matters, which again serve to try to inflate largely him and also sometimes his team, he's also abused government powers to demand more favorable independent press coverage. That includes going at stations the government may have leverage over, the rolling scandal we've seen recently, with as well as the approval of the government's involvement in overseeing a merger that will, if completed, put CNN in the hands of a close Trump man. Diversions. Here he was discussing for a while the renovation of a reflecting pool during what was supposed to be an address to small business owners just this week.
I'll give you just one little anecdote. We have a beautiful, potentially beautiful, built in 1922, it's a long time ago, reflecting pond. And I said, I built all these swimming pools, and they're phenomenal. We sandblasted it, we pebble blasted, what pebble blasting, that's a serious sandblast. A great, beautiful blue color, American flag blue, as opposed to gray.
Yes, as opposed to gray. That was 7 minutes. Now, You could say, imagine if Joe Biden did that for 7 minutes at a debate, or his version of that. We know that Trump has his version of sounding like this, and other people who struggled with aging and cognition have their version. But people watching say, it looks like he's not up to the job anymore, as he fails on the job in ways that are both ideological. You say, well, you're going to go in and start that war. That's a choice. But also relate to competence and planning and discipline and the ability to process conflicting information and make good decisions, which is the essence of leadership. Jon Stewart, speaking of reflecting pools, he was doing his own reflecting on what may be the low bar at the White House these days.
These are the machinations of a genius. He'll tell you himself, as he did this weekend.
I'm the only president to take a cognitive test. You know, the first question is very easy. It's a lion, a giraffe, a bear, and a shark. They say, which one is the bear?
You're the only president to take the cognitive test. Let me ask you a question. Why do you think that is?
Why do you think that is? It's a little funny. We laugh our way through a lot of things until you think about the seriousness of it. And we know we live in a very partisan, amped up environment. So we know there are people who sounded about Biden the way others sound now about Trump.